Welcome to the ATX DAO Podcast, the hub for exploring the forefront of blockchain technology in Austin's Web3 community. We connect you with innovators within ATX DAO and beyond as we venture into the world of decentralized technology. So crack open a beer and join us for a front row seat to learn about the innovations and trends shaping our digital future. This is the ATX DAO Podcast. Welcome to the ATX DAO Podcast. We are excited to welcome Brock Haugen today from the indexing company. Brock, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Very cool. Yeah. And so we actually had a chance to meet briefly at the pitch competition for ATX DAO. So excited to get you on the podcast and kind of share some of the stuff that you're doing with the indexing company. But before we kind of get into that, maybe we just start with just a little bit about kind of who you are, your background, kind of what got you into this crazy space, and then we'll talk more about what you do with indexing company.
Yeah, I was doing mechanical engineering. I was just trying to be a pencil pusher. So it's like, screw that. Only way to still get out of college in 4 years was to get a math degree. It's on my worst subject, but I got a degree in it. Got out. Somewhere along the way, though, I realized I could make money on my laptop. Like, this is cool. So it's like self-taught, learned how to code. Applied to a random job posting that was a year old, and I didn't know it. Yeah, but got into contracting before I got out of college. So I was doing that for a while. I was like, oh, I can make a lot of money if I work extra hours. So I was doing like 16-hour days, just like self-learning, working multiple jobs, doing the whole thing. And then, yeah, was it 2017? It was like the ICO days. I was bored. I was like, oh, I'm going to get another job. I found this job board called ETHLance, where you could get paid in Ethereum for doing random stuff. And this guy he had a posting for converting Photoshop files to HTML, and he had a big budget in ETH. Like, sure, can do that. Fast forward 6 months, they did their ICO, their CTO left. I ended up running their engineering, and he later became my co-founder at Index & Co. Yeah, so I went down the rabbit hole in 2017, trying to do real estate on chain. Yeah, did that for a while, along with a bunch of other stuff. Went to Coinbase for a year and a half, and then 2022 started Index & Co.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, that real estate on chain is one that I feel like a lot of people are still trying to crack. My brother actually is a realtor that's doing blockchain stuff, and he very much would love to pick your brain on how that went, I'm sure.
Yeah, obviously not great. A lot of great ideas, just way too early, like decades too early. Yeah. It's
there's just so much with all the like county clerks and stuff like that. You have to get it figured out. It's just it's wild.
But, yeah, I mean, at one point we were working with, was it Signature Bank? I want to say it was. That's now defunct. But they had their own stable coin, like internally. So we were helping them work with an escrow company or a title company so that they could earn a yield on escrowed funds. So we're like doing this whole multi-chain ACH thing. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Very cool. So this all led you to founding your own gig with the indexing company. So maybe before we get into the company itself, maybe for some of the listeners that aren't as familiar, let's talk about what indexing is and kind of what, that whole thing is. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of y'all's specific approach to that and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The first blog post I wrote for Index & Co. was talking about this. And I tried to zoom all the way out and reclaim the term indexing. And maybe the most relatable for especially the adults in the room would be libraries. Back in the day, in order to look up a book, you would go look at these index cards. So somebody had manually gone through all the books in the library, written down titles, and categorized them onto these index cards. So if you're looking for caterpillars, you go find the section on books about caterpillars. It's that same process today. We do it in databases where you take a giant subset of data, you can index it to make it more searchable. That's really what we're getting at. The indexing is the process of making that data more easily accessible so you can do something with it. That's what we do for blockchain data.
Yeah, makes total sense. So yeah, making sense of it instead of looking through a stack of books trying to find that you want, it takes you to the one that you need.
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
To say you have an uncanny knack of picking the most boring subject crypto to work on. You're like, I'm gonna pick real estate. I'm gonna pick infrastructure. I wonder what it is gonna be next. But that being said, I will say, having known Brock for a little bit now, this is the most succinct and best way I've ever heard the indexing kind of need like put together. Most
Getting
people
there.
are like, I'm just going to ship you data. And it's like,
Yep.
you're like, no, this is data with a purpose, and it's raw data that you can decide what you want to do. So it's
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just wondering though, like, okay, so I got to say a few things. One, you're a fellow Texan now, right?
Yes.
You're going to play Minnesota as well as Texas.
Yes. Just never California.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As long as it's not California, we're good.
Yes.
Okay? So that's two things.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, dude, you forgot to mention somewhere between first grade Minnesota and everything else that you're an ex like Coinbase guy, right? And you did stuff at like TradeGrift or something like that, if I remember correctly. What was it?
TripGrid.
TripGrid. That's what.
Yeah.
Dude. That's okay. So you worked at these big things. Now you're doing your own things. I'm just curious to see, like, like when you did the indexing thing. Before we get into more of the indexing thing, I just gotta ask, like, how did you find your co-founder to come do this thing?
Yeah. So co-founder Steven, he's the one doing the real estate on chain back in 2017. That's how I met him. So he like brought me down the rabbit hole. I never cared about crypto. I still don't really. It shows in my trades. I always liked the data aspect of it. And so that's what I cared about with the real estate on chain, making all that interop. So yeah, we worked together for years before I went to Coinbase. And so when I came out of Coinbase, he was my first call. Literally had the idea, booked a flight as I was driving to the airport, flew and got to him. And I was like, all right, we're doing this.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that explains a lot. So you found someone who was like, okay, let's pick another dry subject. And then double down. And
exactly.
Literally, we're like, no, so that's serendipitous. That's like magic, right? When you pick up the phone and you call your homie and you're like, dude, this is the most boring thing ever. I'm in, bro. Like, and it makes a lot of sense. But like, it's also such a critical aspect. So I just wanted to figure out what was that like founder dynamic and magic that came through. So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I gotta also ask, is your co-founder in Texas as well?
No, so he's outside Telluride. He's no longer with the company at this point, but he lives in Colorado.
All right, at least he's not a California guy. Okay,
exactly.
You get props for that too. Okay, okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just had to get those like background facts in order.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd love to hear more about the indexing company and your crazy journey now. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start, if you don't mind me asking, just like straight
anything.
Up. Why, at its core, why is the indexing company different than any other indexing company?
Short version, indexing is what we sell. Everybody else sells data, and indexing is a part of that process. So expanding on that slightly, you go to the Graph, Covalent, Alchemy, Goldstrike, any of these other providers. The way they all work is data is pre-processed, put in a database, and then resold, usually over an API. It's pool for the customer. They have to request that data. We're truly selling the infrastructure and the pipelines to push it. So we meet the data where it's at in its raw form. We meet customers where they're at with their existing infrastructure, and we leverage distributed compute to tie the two together. So customers get fully transformed data in their environment, all pushed to them in real time.
Okay. So that just means, if I'm understanding from my retriever style, is that like, hey, you're not interpreting the data in any form and functionality. You're just literally retrieval. You're a data retrieval system. And it's like, bro, here's the raw fucking data.
Yes.
Do with it with however you want, right? Okay. So let me ask you this then. Why isn't Alchemy or Covalent or any of these other companies basically been like, bro, like, why are we packaging this data? This is just more work for us. Like, why haven't they been like, dude, this is the easier thing to do? You guys are going to fucking segment this data and slice and dice it any way they want anyways. So, like, why the fuck aren't we doing that in the first place?
Two answers there. Okay, so I'd say on one hand, it's actually not the easier thing to do because we're letting customers control our infrastructure. So they get to decide how this is transformed, and then we run that code on their behalf. So there's a element there where somebody like an Alchemy would have to open the doors to what they're doing under the hood. That's one piece. The second piece, it would cannibalize all their existing products. So like it would eliminate the need for all their APIs if they did this. The APIs are the easier path to developers, to builders, to the lower tier of customer that they go after. which ultimately becomes a race to the bottom on cost. Yeah.
Okay, so that explains. So the built-in cost of all the API business is what's probably not allowing them to deprecate that entire section of the house, is what
Yes.
you're saying. And like, I guess you're also clarifying, just to be clear, in the earlier version that you put in, it seemed like you would fetch the data and you would just send this raw data package to a customer that would transform it on their end. But in this case, you're saying, no. They basically tell us how they want
Yes.
to, and we will take care of that for them. And that's part of our service itself.
That's where the indexing is both the data and the compute. It's the combination.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Also got to ask so then who's your ideal customer? Because if it's someone that's so small that just wants an API, and it can't be someone that's like so big that they're like, bro, we can use kind of like pull this. We're so big that we can knock on Alchemy's doors and be like, just give me the raw fucking data.
Yeah.
Like, who is your ideal like company?
Slightly long-winded answer, but I'll frame it this way. We see the customer lifecycle with data indexing being, you're a builder, you're a hacker, you have an idea, you go to an Alchemy and use the APIs to get started quickly. As soon as you find a chain that they don't support, you want the data transformed for a new feature, whatever it might be. Once you have some traction, you realize Alchemy is not going to work for you. This is where you maybe go raise funds. You've probably closed a seed or a Series A. At that point, 9 out of 10 times, those companies are about to spend 50% of their raise on data infrastructure, whether it's humans, AWS bills, whatever it might be. We can slot in at that point and save them 70%. So we like immediately can work with them before they build all this infrastructure in-house. That's sort of our sweet spot. What we're trying to get to, this is my own shortcoming, just not being able to do enterprise sales. We can save enterprises even more, but they've already built this. So the switching cost in their heads is not worth the squeeze, so to speak.
Okay, so your ideal kind of customer base would then be like companies that already have taken the Alchemy ball and run with it a little bit because they get the free credit and then subsidization and everything like that's there. And I ran into a bunch of Alchemy bros actually in Denver.
Yeah.
Now, they're a good group of people. They do make a very hard, compelling case. But like you're saying that it's like, hey, when we actually run the math, you're like, bro, all that money you're raising, you're using it up in that burn rate.
Yes.
And you can save a bunch of money using us. And basically we will do like bespoke transformation of data for you in a way.
Because every single time what happens with customers or companies, they say use Alchemy. At some point they realize, hey, I want to run analytics on this data, or I want to do something else with it. So now they're calling Alchemy to bring it into their own infrastructure, reprocess it, and then store it again. We're just saying eliminate the middleman. We'll process it for you and send it straight to your database. Just cut out all those intermediary steps.
Okay. So give me an example of a specific kind of, let's say in DeFi, right? DeFi is a huge data-driven kind. Well, everything in crypto, it's a very data-driven kind of mindset, right?
Yeah.
You needed to make product decisions. You needed to make forecasts. And you needed to do everything. So give me an example in DeFi, for example, or actually pick anything where you say, hey, this is example how Alchemy would do this. And you don't have to go into the details about disclosing the client, but I'm just curious to see, like, this is an example that says, this is where there's a difference. And this is the cost savings.
Super classic example. We have a number of customers that are building consumer-facing apps. Those users of those apps have wallets. Those wallets make transactions. The product needs to know about those transactions across chains and as real time as possible. Great. We can process on 110 different chains all of those transactions for all of those wallets and normalize the resulting schema so that the end product just has to be notified. So they're just like, hey, this transaction happened on this chain and here's the hash and whatever the normalized parameters are. You go with somebody like an Alchemy, even they have a webhooks product, you can't listen to more than, I think it's 10,000 wallets at a time, and it's only EVM, and they don't do the transformation for you. So now you're getting this raw random data for only a subset of your users, and you have to finish all the transformations on your end. That then also blows up if you want to do Solana, Bitcoin, Cosmos, any of these other networks that the traditional infrastructure doesn't support.
Okay. So, for example, so you're telling me, just so that I can connect the bridge here, is that let's say there's a user that's on, let's say, AVAX, and they take a debt position for a project there. And now that is basically pinging a wallet there and letting them know that they have a debt position with whatever their kind of like DeFi marketplace is, whatever their maker is, whatever there is on that section. I apologize because I don't know much about that, but like Luke is like a literal demigod. I has probably forgotten more than I'll ever know, right? But like that being said, you're saying that like if I wanted to be on like let's say Solana and the same user has used some kind of bridging service and I want to get notified that this user has, let's say, taken that CDP position, this wallet tracking scenario would result in a notification hitting the indexing company, and the indexing company hitting my protocol to let me know that this user has taken this position on this other side, and their risk parameter in relation to their overall portfolio or whatever the case that I want to track is notified.
Yep. Better yet, maybe you know already that the user has a AVAX wallet and a Solana wallet. We can notify you on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's super interesting. My next question is that I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like going into a rabbit hole of questions.
No, I love it.
This is good, Ash.
My next question is that like, how come looking at this data, how much of an ML pipeline or agentic pipeline have you paired internally, at least in relation to your data processing?
AI LLMs hallucinate, but we don't want our pipelines to hallucinate. They're not part of the process. That being said, we can serve other LLMs. So we have customers that are training ML models off of this data, and we can provide that fully normalized and ready to go.
Okay. So agents will effectively be one of your customer bases.
Exactly.
Okay. So if agentic access is a demographic of your customer base, right? It's going to be the next wave of customer base. The question then is like, how much agentic access do you predict will like basically be your portfolio of users?
As we're looking at the market right now, I imagine there's not a lot of revenue there because it's not consistent access. It's still human driven. So humans are going to ask a question, the AI is going to go ask for the data, feed it all back. So percentage wise, we're imagining it's pretty small, maybe like 5-10%. That will likely grow in time, especially if we ever get to the point where agents are acting without human involvement. I think that's where it gets way more interesting. So like we have a customer that is training an agent on Meteora swap pools, right? And they want to know in real time as new events come in so that agent can take actions. So then it's, I don't know, the agent's maybe the customer, but it's like the parent company that owns the agent that's really the customer. Depends on how you want to break that down, but I think that's the bigger use case.
Okay, so basically what you can do is you're telling me that if you wanted, in this case, I guess like this customer, without getting too much into their details, is kind of like creating a better kind of trading strategy, I guess, in terms of like the parameters constantly evolving based on your data feed coming in, right? And basically the agentic access that is being given is getting access from this data and then basically trading on this data outside of just like what is happening.
Yep.
To inform its strategy. How much do you think? Actually, I don't want to ask that question. I don't want to. I'm going to stop myself there. That's an off the air question.
Okay.
And Luke, feel free to jump in anytime. You know how it is. Like I'll just go down a rabbit hole of questions.
You're good, man. And honestly, some of this is over my head, so I'm learning as we go through it.
No, it's really simple, really. I mean, like, it's just like things just seem overcomplicated, right?
Yes.
It's just, this is one of the better ways of really putting at it. Like, it's funnily building our own startup. We talked to a bunch of indexing companies and huge data providers from the likes of Alchemy all the way to something that's way, on the other end. And, we do work with Maestro, We also know Oil, for example, and the Sandshoe guys, right? Which are also in Austin. They're also part of the DAO. We're all funnily part of the same DAO. Brock might be soon part of the DAO too. I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yes. So there is a lot of like expertise in the data sector within the DAO. But it's very rare to see people like actually just explain it in a way that it's like, dude, you should be able to explain this to someone at the bar, even after they had like a few drinks.
That is literally how I practice. Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good. It should be, information should be palatable by people. If not, it's completely like esoteric and useless, right? I gotta ask then, like, since you started this thing, is there any unexpected, just shifting gears out of product, any unexpected like curveballs that came about when you did? Like you clearly saw, you're like, hey, you maybe made a business case. You're like, you probably, I bet you formed it at Coinbase. You're like, look, there's this huge gap between these guys, like these guys. We can create a real gap here. Like we can serve this customer base in this gap. But I was just curious to see what is like a. You don't have to share it, but I'm just curious from a founder to founder.
Yeah.
What weird fucking curveball came about when you took this baby out off the dock and into the.
Oh man, I mean, from day one, our first customer wanted Tezos. Who the fuck wants Tezos?
At Paris, I was literally at their headquarters.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I can talk shit about them. They did have some really nice fucking cannabis beers. But yes, it's like fucking weird. You're like, who starts with this, bro?
Yes. So the first chain we indexed was Tezos. It was like, this is weird.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so like right off the bat, we had that differentiation where we're like, well, we're not EVM only because we don't even have EVM yet. It's just Tezos.
And you're going to start off with the outbound.
Yes, exactly. And that was kind of our market opportunity. And like what we're still trying to chase, to be honest, is we can onboard new chains in an hour. Yeah, we'll go fetch the long tail because we don't care. No, what else? Man, so many mistakes along the way. Like most of it, in hindsight, I would say has been 2.5 years of R&D. Just like, is it even possible to do this with distributed compute and all the orchestration that comes with it? So we've had like fat finger mistakes that cost us 40 grand in a month because we're like, oops, ran too much data that time. And just like, yeah. But no, I think maybe the biggest surprise that was a blessing was honestly the NFT market died. Sucks personally. From a data standpoint, it helped us really focus in on things like the DeFi use case, which are actually much, much simpler. Freaking NFT metadata and trying to source off chain with APIs that are maybe down or broken or whatever it might be, always a nightmare.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the fuck up, if that's okay.
Yeah, there's been many. Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to my time to getting interviewed on this podcast, there's going to be a constant series of fuck ups. I just, because as a founder, I'm also like super interesting to see like, what was, so like the left curve scenario for you is that like, I'm guessing when you left Coinbase, where you were just thinking EVM and then like Tezos became the thing and you're like, I guess we're starting non-EVM. Is that what happened?
So, I mean, I started all of this, at least the ideas with it, by front running OpenSea. So I built my own indexer for OpenSea trades, like in front run retail investors back in like 2021. I like made a tiny bit of money doing that, but I was just doing it off my laptop, still trying to do like the whole distributed compute thing. And like I'd run that for $100 a month. It was great. Fast forward, Coinbase, they hadn't solved indexing. I still don't think they have. If I wanted to build my own consumer products, would have to start from scratch. So it's just kind of this overarching theme that's the main thesis, I guess. The cost of data is going to zero. So we don't want to sell data. That's what Autopsy does. Every single company needs slightly different data. So we have to bake in some sort of compute to this. And so kind of starting from those two theses, like, okay, how do we just universally access raw data and transform it so we can deliver it to customers?
Okay. What is this? Tell me about the $40,000 overdraft on the data that was there. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah. This was, I think like a year ago. So much of our R&D at this point is just optimizing our per unit cost. And so we're really trying to tie this down to a transformation as our unit economics, which is tied inherently to compute. Along the way, we've had to aggressively eliminate centralized bottlenecks. Reasons being things like logging. At one point, we were using Datadog. We did a single job for a single customer that was 12 grand in a month in Datadog costs because we were just emitting like one log for every transformation. It's not that much. Yeah. So we ended up having to build our own distributed logging system using BigQuery. We just like eliminated all third parties. Similarly on the compute side, we've had a couple times where specifically during backfills, customers need all the historical data. There was this one time, I forget what we were doing. It was like multiple chains at once. And the orchestration of hundreds of servers to process, say, terabytes of data in a few hours isn't super simple, especially if you're trying to eliminate centralized bottlenecks. So long story short, this backfill basically ran like 10 times and 10x the expected cost on it. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That is really interesting because I also find it so interesting. Like, this is one of those conversations where I feel like just the fuck ups, like between founders, like you could sit down and talk to other people, not even founders, just at like core executive companies. So I'm sure even like Luke has seen this too, where he's like, bro, you can like dissect those mistakes and then like really think about all your assumption shit.
Yes. Yes.
Your go to attack that plan, and then like how it all fucking blew up, and then you like get to do the autopsy on it, and you're like, holy shit, our assumptions were like radically fucking wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Or like a core issue on that one was memory store inside of Google Cloud as a managed Redis. This was like one of our only centralized avenues where we have like a triple cache layer so that we can hold the customer configs. Just like, what is the transformation we need to run? At scale, there's a memory leak in it that caused it to max out capacity and just error out for everything. And so that's why we processed it so many times.
And so you had like the terrible
Yes.
feedback loop that's there. They're just
Yes.
running it over and over again. That sucks. Oh,
Yeah.
Especially for a startup, you're just like, that's a lot of money you get.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah. We've broken a lot of systems. Yeah.
Then I gotta ask, what was like one of the things that you never expected that you were like, holy shit, this is like like you mentioned the NFT thing dying out. Is there some framework or some strategy that you guys employed internally that you were like, this was a really left curve thing? We're like, this one was deploying this framework or this approach, knocked it out of the park like every time. I'm just curious.
From a methodology standpoint, from day one, I just assume things are going to break. So we just build with that assumption. Just like everything's going to break every day. So make it resilient from day one. And that's been really helpful as far as like retries, queuing mechanisms, how we handle things. Like our promise is always at least once delivery, not exactly once. So that's been one of the core tenets that's worked really, really well for us. And then it's manifested in things like being able to do our own distributed logging. We use our own indexing service to index our own logs to then pipe into BigQuery. And that lets us debug whatever we want.
That's
Maybe
smart.
there's a 2-minute delay, but we have everything and it costs us like $20 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have your own internal like checks and balances on it.
Exactly.
It's just smart to really think about these things. I also love that love that saying, we have to deliver everything at least once.
Yes.
Right? But it's kind of like, bro, it can't
Yeah.
fall apart after the first ship, bro.
Right.
It's got to at least go, to at least 2 times. I ask these questions because like it's really funny for us too. When we were building on Doge, like I share this because like we spent a lot of time building an index because we didn't have proper indexing services at the time. And then the market kind of caught up, and then we were like, we spent a month of resources of like 3 of our resources, like literally our team just like working on this. And we were like, oh, now there's like performant kind of indexing solutions. We didn't need to do this. That's a month we'll never get back. Right? And it's like, you recognize these things. You never recognize these mistakes. Some things are like, you just have to fucking roll the dice. But then ultimately looking back on it, clearly it was a mistake. We learned a lot of things, but nonetheless, like we were just like, dude, those resources could have been allocated elsewhere, just like your capital and time, like compute resources in your, in the scenario you described.
One of the elevator pitch I give customers, we're boring, so you don't have to be.
Yeah.
That's the whole spiel. Like indexing infra is necessary and boring, and it should be.
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of us never really caught on to this whole indexing and the requirements for it because we were actually kind of like comfortable in EVM environments. But then once you came to these UTXO environments and like beyond, we were like, holy shit, the world is radically different. So in order to run that kind of stuff, or if you're in Tezos, right? Like, you might need it. But like, it is kind of interesting to think about like it's in general, it's very critical, but like the need for these components to build any kind of protocol level advancements on top of them change radically, right? Your dependency rates and the number of solutions you have is changing radically. You were at Denver, right? Like a couple of weeks ago. I was curious, in the indexing space, like in the infrastructure space, was there something that you saw or you talked to and you're like, whoa, this is like a fucking terrible takeaway? Or it's like, no, this is like a brilliant takeaway. What is the two extremes? I'm just curious.
Oh man, honestly, it's been the same narratives for years. I'm like not seeing anything new, which bullish for us, sucks for everyone else. Everyone's just trying to sell data and put a token on top. That's all that's happening in the market right now. And if you're not doing that, you're getting acquired by somebody else. That's all that's happening. Honestly, one of the most interesting conversations I had came outside of Web3, but still tied to the conference. We stumbled in, we were trying to play pool. It's like my team and I, like trying to get drunk, play pool. Stumbled into an event by Couchbase, which is a database provider. They like sort of knew about crypto, so they hosted this event, but no one was there. Like no one knew about it. So we wandered in and then talked indexing with them for like an hour. So they were like fascinated by the space and how they could help serve it. So like, yeah, like that's those conversations where we're bringing in sort of the Web 2 worlds. Nobody cares about the crypto. Like this is the infra layer. Those I think are the most interesting for me.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, cool. Luke, feel free to jump in at any time. I feel like Luke's like, what's going? He's like, dear God, dude, let me get a word in here.
No, you're good. So I am curious, just to kind of like you mentioned DeFi is one of the big ones. You also mentioned that NFTs were something that y'all either were very involved in or thought you were going to be. So what are some other common things that you're kind of like folks that tend to benefit from the things that y'all offer the most?
Yeah, common use cases. Yeah, used to be a lot of NFTs. So now DeFi is big, really tied to, there's two flavors of that. So one on the wallet side, I want to know about my wallet transactions. The other on a more analytical standpoint, so I want to know about protocols, chains, more aggregate views. And then there's sort of use cases that splinter off all of that. So it'll be like particular protocols need to index their own events to power their product, or points programs, things like block explorers, kind of building up on top of that base layer of analytics.
Yeah. There's an organization called the TIE, which you're probably familiar with. They have a site called Frosty Metrics on Avalanche, where I don't know if they use y'all, but they definitely are kind of along those lines, where they show data on all the different wallets on the chain, that kind of thing. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. Sadly, not a customer yet, but hypothetically, we could eliminate all their infra costs and they can continue to serve their same product.
Yep. Very cool.
Yeah.
I got to ask also, how much into the real-time analytics have FinCEN applications written all over it?
Hypothetically, plenty. Yeah. So like one of our customers just raised a Series B in the stablecoin space. They have a whole WebWorks product that's actually powered by us under the hood. It's like their users submit a transfer, it has to pass KYC, all these regulation checks. They're still getting the information from on-chain from us to power all that.
Very interesting. Also, can I ask is how much of this stuff is directly pluggable into like debit and credit card systems itself?
Yeah, if we had that direct access, absolutely. Like our infrastructure is totally agnostic to blockchains. Like we also index Farcaster. We don't care. If there's a stream of events, we can process it and transform it and deliver it to customers. Yeah.
Interesting. And like the agentic part that you mentioned earlier, like with Farcaster, right? So like the question that I'm trying to ask myself is like, if you're taking all this Farcaster data and it's arbitrary data, you're just like, this is just interesting data. How we transform this data is up to a customer.
Exactly.
How we transform this data. Now, you mentioned that like, hey, a part of your business now is like only 10% of your book of business is like agentic access, right? Like, so if we were to build an ML model and I say, hey, I'm going to give you this ML model and I want remote access to tweak any kind of parameters on this. And I want this ML model to like learn and grow based on this Farcaster data and then see how much hallucinations it really can produce. And if I want to amplify that or, turn it down, you would basically run the model for me on your system and then basically let it manipulate the data and then rewrite to the actual chain.
The way we would work today, you would still run the model, but we could feed the model directly.
Okay.
So we take whatever's on Farcaster, normalize it in a way that the model understands and pass it directly there.
Okay, all right. So basically, we're still running it on our side. It's not like it's like a client side like service that's being run. Like, but on your side, you're just still providing all the data feed.
Yep.
The
exactly.
transformation is happening on our side. You guys aren't transforming.
We transform it. We just don't run ML models at the moment. So we'll transform it with JavaScript, like more deterministically, I guess is the way to put it.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
What's an interesting use case of like data that you're seeing manipulated that's outside of the mainstream right now? You mentioned Forecaster. I'm just curious to see, like, is there any kind of quirky outcomes that you're seeing with Forecaster?
Not necessarily quirky. Like we have some customers leveraging the social graph of Forecaster to build up their customer database, if you will. And then those wallets get watched for on-chain transactions across various chains. So there's like customers building social DeFi projects where you can watch what your friends are investing in and invest with them. So like there's some interesting overlaps there.
Like a copy trading kind of aspect.
Yes.
That's like natively built in.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one's like there's like vectors like that, right? I think Ash, I sent you that one. It's on like Solana and Base. I think maybe a couple other chains, but you can see your friends' trades and like join them in there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this one's actually called Friends. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so Friends is Brian.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's I mean, him and I forget his co-founder's name. His co-founder is ex-Facebook or something like that.
I want to say JP.
Yes.
Yeah.
JP.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Both those guys are incredibly smart. Good guys.
Yes.
Luke, you got to meet these guys, Brian and JP. They're actually really cool dudes. I think what was it? Brian was in Austin like a few months ago or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Sounds right.
Mr. Check-in, and I was like,
yeah.
What are you doing in town, bro?
Yep. He gets around.
Yeah. But they have a very interesting application. We need to talk to them sometime.
Yeah.
So okay, that's really interesting. So this trading functionality and the messaging app is now basically using this to like look at copy trading and then build this with Forecast.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I'm curious then to see, like, when you started this mission, it said like you guys started with 2. Now, where are you guys at? And I'm curious, like, what's next on the horizon then for you? You've are you going to, after going to ETH Denver, which had like so many attendees, you're saying that the most enlightening conversation happened with a non-Web3 event.
Yes. Yep.
Are you going to go to many more Web3 conferences? Right. So tell me a little. I know it's kind of like an old, broad question. I'm just asking less.
So many layers to this. I'll try not to put my VC pitch hat on. In the near term, from a go-to-market strategy, we picked Web3 because the data starts permissionless. So open data set that we can leverage directly, and we don't have to ask permission for it, right? That cuts, if you think about this as a marketplace, that eliminates the supply side cost effectively. We can access supply freely, we can do the transformations, and we deliver it to the demand side, the customers. Product-wise, roadmap-wise, what we're working towards is, yes, building out more demand side, so more self-service tooling, more self-service products, increase demand for our existing data sets. Where we end up in a year, the goal is to protocolize all this to leverage other people's compute and other people's data. So we really want to eventually take on Web 2 without them knowing that that's what's happening.
Do you feel like your natural evolution from this space will really, because you're coming from an area of the world that's there, because it's like the way you're saying, it's like most people are going like this, right? You're going backwards. Like
yes.
You want to go backwards, right? Like, do you feel like your next evolution will be that of like a synthetic data company?
Yeah. Databricks, for instance, if you know them, I think they're a natural gold star competitor, if you will. But I think we end up in that world if we do this right. But even Databricks being they're a traditional ETL, so extract, transform, load, they have a lot of intermediary storage steps. Their costs are really high. Again, if we're leveraging this distributed compute and we do the orchestration correctly, we can eat their lunch because we'll be 90% cheaper.
Yeah, but there is a certain, so the reason I ask about the synthetic data stuff is because before you get to Databricks, because it seems like Databricks is like, and forgive me if I'm wrong, because I don't know much about the infrastructure side of business. So I'm just going to, keep asking dumb questions. Databricks is a huge company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, it's kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like with data and infrastructure, it seems like the more data you have, the better your product gets. And like the more data you can just basically have, wrap your arms around, the better your data gets as well, and the bigger you get, right? Now, they came from a Web2 world where they've had a huge advantage of capturing that data and then getting, paid access and like services that come in that provide the data and pool that data. Kind of like how Grok is benefiting from Elon owning Twitter, right?
Yes.
It has one of the best data pipelines on the fucking planet, right? Arguably, if like DeepSeek was a ByteDance product, it would be 1 billion times better, right? That's just a simple reality. My question, however, then, is that I ask about synthetic data because it's like, look, if you're coming from a world of permissionless data, right? And you're going into a world of like agents going from a 10% of your business to like, let's say 30%,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then don't you think data creation, right, and curation, right, would be the next best thing that expands your business before you get to the likes of a Databricks? Because Databricks is like, you're going to need a lot more data to catch up to them. So that gap of the data that you have, where they have, you have to either create or you need time to consume more data, right?
Well, so from the couple elements here, at least from where I sit, Databricks at its core is still a processing engine. You as a customer have to bring your own data. They're not facilitating that originally.
Okay.
If we do this right, we're saying that companies can process the data where it sits and reuse other people's data. So like we're protocolizing that access and transformation layer directly.
Okay.
So it should actually be a faster onboarding for net new data doing it this way.
Okay. So you want to compete one-to-one on a level with them. Basically, that would, or your ambition in terms of like basically computing and processing the data wherever the data is. Right?
Exactly. Like the big differentiator with us and companies like Snowflake, Databricks, all these existing guys, in order to leverage their infrastructure, you first have to import your data. We're trying to eliminate that import step. Meet the data where it's at, meet the customer where they're at.
Okay. All right. I'm curious then, why do you feel like, okay, so I'm guessing with Databricks and stuff like that, I'm guessing you're familiar with the likes of like a Gretel, right?
Sure.
Which is also like a huge synth data provider in Web2 rails. Like, do you think that there is a space for synthetic data creation in Web2?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Arguably, there's a bunch of companies doing similar things, even if they don't call it that. From where we sit, I think we can make a lot more money just powering all those companies.
Okay. So you want to be, okay, so you're in the bullet business, not in the gun business.
Exactly. Yes.
Or you want to be like the ASML. You're like, dude, the actual machines that make the actual chips.
Exactly.
Smart.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
We're the printing press, not the books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
There we go.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you dumbing it down for me. I'm sorry. I know it's like there's like levels of intelligence here. I'm just but that's a very eloquent way of putting this up. Like, okay, so you didn't answer my other question though. Are you going to go to any Web3 conferences this year?
Yes. Plan is still the typical circuit is the ETH Denver, Consensus in Toronto, and then probably Def Connect, which I think is in Buenos Aires. And then I don't know, might do the FarCon event in New York. There's like a few mixed in there.
Okay. All right. I'm curious, is there any DAO data that can be pooled in that like would be very interesting for DAO creation stuff?
Totally.
What kind of data would be accessible and valuable? But I'm very curious to see what it would be.
So that question right there, that like, what data do I want? That's our toughest from a selling perspective. This is why we can't work with like the lowest tier customers, if you will, because they often don't know what they want yet. The short answer though is we have all of it. It's on chain. We have access to it. You can get it. So for DAOs, you have things like votes, membership portfolios. Are they active on other chains? Like, do you want to reward members for doing particular actions on other chains? Whatever it might be. Yeah.
Be cool. Well,
That's cool.
We need to think about this a little bit more. I know that me and Luke have been talking about a couple of things with the pod about doing it like also on chain in different kinds of aspects. I think as we formulate those ideas, it would be cool to like bring it to you and then be like, dude, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Does this work or not?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm all out of questions, really, for now. Anyways, I'm feeling like another 45 minutes on the the porcelain throne and be like, oh, I forgot about these questions. Damn it. but
Yep.
and then I'll text you off chain.
Yeah, exactly. You can just send it to me on Telegram. Yeah, it's
I
fine.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gotta also ask, when are you coming back to Austin?
I don't know. I'm looking for an excuse to. Yeah. No hard plans, but I want to. It's close.
All right. Well, yeah, I know that there's ARC Austin and Edge City Austin and all that stuff that was happening for South by Southwest this week.
I know.
Next week, South by is also going on. So those could be viable excuses, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if there's any good events I should come down for.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get something because it was kind of a bummer. We had permissionless, we had consensus, and now
both are.
Now it's kind of just they're both gone. Maybe we'll get consensus back after the convention center's done. TBD on that. Very cool. I did have a question just in terms of just kind of the user base and that kind of things. You already mentioned kind of some of the folks that would use you, but if someone is considering different data needs, that kind of thing, what's the best, what does the process look like for them to get started with y'all? And then kind of how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, hopefully by the time this airs, it'll just be docs.indexing.co. We're rolling that out this week. Fully self-service. We're working on things like open source templates to help customers get quick started. And yeah, it's really as simple as write JavaScript that takes in raw data from 110 chains, whichever ones you want. The output of that JavaScript is what gets sent directly to your webhook, database, whatever it might be. Yeah.
So it's pretty much all self-serve. They don't need to do anything contacting y'all unless they have questions, I'm guessing. But
exactly, DMs are always open. Feel free to reach out, but yeah, don't have to. There's no sales pitch involved.
Nice.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, it was the other thing that everyone should know is that you won the ATX DAO pitch competition, right?
Yes.
Dude, where's the trophy? I was expecting it right next to the
it's just on the shelf.
Oh,
yeah.
There
nice.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I was hoping that you would put it right next to that beautiful
it's Riverside. It doesn't open it up wide enough. Yeah, but it's there. It's there on the shelf. And then I got a golden sport in East Denver too.
Nice.
There we go. He's collecting trophies.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, man, it was really, really cool to have you and the team come, be part of the pitch the pitch competition.
I love it.
Also winning. It's congratulations.
Thank you.
We should have opened with that, but instead it was me saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go wash my face."
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I'm rooting for your company. I think it's super interesting. I think it's a unique avenue and approach towards doing this. I also think that it's kind of really interesting to think about what's happening in the ML space where contextual referencing eventually goes to zero.
Mm-hmm.
They do recognize it through the data where it's dude. The data is eventually going to go to zero too. So we need to add some bells and whistles around it that's going to make us special. So it's kind of interesting to see that you guys are pioneering that. And you're doing it in a very dude, we don't have to make this complicated. It's way easier.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of a cool vibe, man. I really think that, I'm rooting for you guys. I think this is going to be a pretty cool company to see grow and build out.
Heck yeah. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Brock, it's been great having you on, man.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you guys so much. It was fun.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the ATX DAO Podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. To learn more about ATX DAO, visit us at atxdao.com and follow us on X, Farcaster, and LinkedIn at ATX DAO. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.